Alright, in this video we are looking at the dimensional analysis practice sheet. So we are going to set up dimensional analysis to solve every one of these problems. Now you may have learned how to do unit conversions before now without dimensional analysis. In fact, we should have learned that maybe several times over the course of our school career, but the new part of unit conversions in chemistry is the dimensional analysis. So even if you can do these conversions without setting up dimensional analysis, the part that you are graded on is your setup. So please make sure to show units and show conversion factors and answers with correct significant figures and units for each and every question that we go through here. So number 1 says convert 2.3 miles to feet. So whenever we have a dimensional analysis problem, we start by identifying our given value, and we write that all the way to the left-hand side of our page. And our given value is what it tells us to convert or change units. And it always starts with a number, and we underline our given value, which is 2.3, and we keep underlining until we also have a unit that goes with it. And the unit will always be right of the given value, just to the right. So 2.3 miles is our given value. So we're going to take that and write it all the way over to the left-hand side of the page, 2.3, and instead of writing out miles, I'm going to use the correct abbreviation for miles, which is MI. So I'm just going to put, MI here. And that just shortens what I have to write down a little. Please don't make up your own abbreviations, that's not okay, but we can use abbreviations that are already in existence. And also, when I start dimensional analysis, just to remind myself that the starting value is up in the numerator, I like to put it over 1 to remind myself that the 2.3 miles is in the numerator, and currently I don't have anything in the denominator. Okay. And of course in dimensional analysis we're always going to be multiplying by some conversion factor, so I'm going to go ahead and put my line for my conversion factor. Now, to figure out what goes in my conversion factor, I want to start by figuring out what units go in my conversion factor, and then I'll come back and fill in my numbers later using this piece of information that's given to me in the problem, that 5,280 feet is equal to 1 mile. But I first take the unit that I'm starting with, and I need this unit, the miles, to cancel out, so I'm going to drag and drop that down into the denominator of my conversion factor. Miles. So this way, now I have a miles in the numerator and a miles in the denominator, so these units will cancel out. So I set up my miles in the denominator. Now I want to know what I am converting to, and that's what will go up in the numerator of my conversion factor is the unit that I'm converting to. So looking back at my problem, it told me to convert 2.3 miles to the new unit of feet. So that's what I need to get to. So that's going to go up in the numerator, and I'm going to abbreviate feet, FT, which is the correct abbreviation there. So now I have my unit set up. I look and I see that my miles will cancel out, one in the numerator, one in the denominator, and I've converted to feet, so I have my setup complete. All that I have to do is put in some numbers. Unfortunately, I'm given how many feet there are in 1 mile. And I know in a conversion factor I just need 2 equivalent quantities. So I'm just going to take the numbers and pair them up with my units in my conversion factor. So next to feet, I'm going to put 5,280 because that is what is in my equivalent. See, 5,280 feet. And then next to miles, I'm going to put 1 mile. And there's my total setup. My last step is just to solve this problem using my calculator. And remember that we multiply everything in the numerator, so we're going to multiply 2.3 times 5,280, and then we divide by everything in the denominator. So divide by 1 again, which of course will give me the same thing. So I don't actually need to type that part into my calculator. So I'm going to come over here, 2.3 times 5,280. And that I'm going to hit enter. And then if I did need to divide by my denominator, I could hit divided by 1. But of course, if I do that, it's going to still give me the same answer. So my answer, 2.3 times 5,280 is, let's go back to my pen here, 12,144. And of course I need a unit on my answer. Looking back at my problem, I have a miles in the numerator and miles in the denominator, so these are going to cancel out. And the unit that I'm left with is just feet. So that will be the unit that I put on my answer over here. Need my pen here. Feet. Now our last step is to check on our significant figures. And when we're checking significant figures, we want to look at the given value. We don't want to look at our conversion factors, which is this information, our equivalency or our conversion factor information for significant figures. We want to look only at the given value in the problem. And remember, our given value is 2.3 miles. So we want our answer to have the same number of significant figures as our given value. So 2.3 miles has 2 significant figures. So we need our answer over here to also have 2 significant figures. And right now, this answer right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures. So we need to do some rounding. So just like we've done many times before, we're going to underline the digits we get to keep. And then we will just round the rest of our value. So we get to keep the 1. Whoops, lost my pen again. Pen. We get to keep the 1 and the 2 significant figures, and then we need to round the rest. We're going to look at this 1 right here to determine if we are going to round the 2 up to a 3 or whether we're going to keep it as a 2. And 1 is less than 5, so we are going to keep it as a 2, so I'll put 1, 2. And then we have all these spaces before a decimal point where we need to put some placeholder zeros. So I'm going to fill in all the rest of these spaces with zeros. And these zeros, of course, are not significant because there is no decimal point. So this value, 12,000 feet, only has 2 significant figures and is rounded correctly, and I'll box my final answer there. So that's a lot of steps. We're going to get faster at this as we go on. So let's move on to the next problem. Convert 145 pounds to kilograms. So we have U.S. customary unit to a metric unit, and then it tells us that 1 kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. So once again, we're going to start by finding our given value. In this case, it's 145, and the unit is pounds, and we'll write that all the way over to the left-hand side. And I'm going to go ahead and put that over 1 to remind myself that that's up in the numerator, and then I'll multiply by some conversion factor. The next thing I want to do is set up the units in my conversion factor. So the thing that I want to cancel, which is pounds, I'm going to put that on the bottom, pounds, LBS. And then the unit that I'm trying to get to goes on top. So looking back at the problem, it says convert 145 pounds to kilograms. So kilograms is going to go on top, and I'm going to actually abbreviate it kg instead of writing out the whole word. Now that we have our units set up and we can see that pounds will cancel out, we can look for some numbers to put into our conversion factor. And remember, I'm going to look at the given information, and I'm just going to pair the numbers with the correct units. So 1 kilogram, so I'm going to put a 1 next to my kilogram, equals 2.2 pounds. So I'm going to put a 2.2 next to my pounds. Okay, I have my whole problem set up. Now all I need to do is type this into my calculator. Remember, we multiply everything on top, and then we divide by everything on the bottom or in the denominator. So when I type this into my calculator, I'm going to multiply 145 times 1, which I don't really need to put in my calculator. 145 times 1 is still going to be 145. And then we'll divide by everything in the denominator. So So we're going to divide by this 2.2 pounds down here. So divided by, whoops, clear, divided by 2.2 pounds. Hit enter. And I got a big long decimal there, so I'm going to write out some of those values. Let's see. So we have 65 point, I'll write out 909. But of course I'm not quite done yet because I need to round my answer to the correct number of significant figures. Oh, and I also haven't put units. Let's do our units first. Pounds is in the denominator and in the numerator, so those are going to cancel out. So our final unit will be kilograms. So that's what we end up with. And now we need to round to correct significant figures. Looking at our given value, 145 pounds, that has 3 significant figures. So that's what we want to round our answer to as well. So I'm going to keep 1, 2, 3 digits, significant digits, and then I'm going to use the next digit to round appropriately. 0 is certainly less than 5, so it's going to stay at 65.9 kilograms. And we'll box in our final answer there. Number 3, convert 8 ounces to grams, given that 1 ounce equals 28.35 grams. So let's start by underlining our given value, 8 ounces, and we'll write that all the way over to the left. And I'm going to go ahead and abbreviate ounces. The abbreviation for ounce is OZ. I'll put that over 1 to remind us that it's up in the numerator. Times some conversion factor equals some new answer. Now the unit we want to cancel is ounces, so we're going to put that in the denominator of our conversion factor. And then up in the numerator we want to put our new unit, our desired unit. So we're trying to convert 2 grams here. So that's what we'll put up in the numerator, grams, or we can abbreviate it just G. Next, we fill in our numbers. Now that we have our units set up correctly, let's go ahead and fill in those numbers. Looking at the given information, we have 1 ounce equals 28.35 grams. So we're just going to pair up those numbers with the unit. So 1 ounce, so next to ounce, I'm going to put a 1. Equals 28.35 grams. So next to grams, I'm going to put 28.35. Whoops, didn't quite get the 5 there. Okay, we have our problem set up, we have correct units, we have some values in our conversion factor. The last step is just to type this into our calculator. So we're going to multiply everything on top and divide by everything on bottom. So that would be 8 times 28.35. We're going to hit enter. 226.8, divide by everything on bottom, so divided by 1, that's still going to be the same thing. So our answer is 226.8. Now we have to figure out some units here. Looking back at our problem, ounces is both in the numerator and in the denominator, so those are going to cancel out. And we'll be left with grams as our unit. And then our last step, of course, is to look at significant figures. So our given value of 8 ounces, that actually only has 1 significant figure. So we need to round our answer to just 1 significant figure as well. So we get to keep this 2, but everything else we need to round. So we're going to look at that next digit over to see if it rounds up or stays a 2. 2 is less than 5, so our first 2 is going to stay a 2. And then we need to fill in placeholder zeros for both of these digits that are before the decimal point, the 2 and the 6. And then after the decimal point, we don't need to fill in that digit because we don't need to hold the place value of the decimal because we're just rounding to 1 significant figure, which is actually in the hundreds place. But we do need to fill in a 0 for the 2, a 0 for the 6 to hold the place value of the number. Because if we just put 2, 2 is nowhere near 226.8. But 200 is pretty close to 226.8. It's just rounded to one significant digit. So 200 grams is our final answer, rounded to just one significant figure, and we will box that final answer. Number 4, convert 150 yards to meters, given that 1 meter equals 1.1 yards. So we are going to start with our given value, which is 150 yards. We'll write that out to the side, 150 yards. I'm just going to abbreviate yards, YDS. And we'll put that over 1 to remind ourselves that it is up in the numerator. Then we're doing dimensional analysis. We need to multiply by some conversion factor to get our new answer. We want to put the unit that we're trying to cancel on the bottom. So in this case, that would be yards. So our yards needs to be dragged and dropped down to the bottom. And then we are putting the unit that we're trying to get to on the top. So our desired unit, we're trying to convert to meters. So meters is what goes on top, and I'm going to go ahead and abbreviate meters just M. Now that we have our unit set up correctly, let's go ahead and plug in some numbers. Based on the information that's given, we know that 1 meter equals 1.1 yards. Those are equivalent values. And so we can use that information to fill in our conversion factor, just matching up our units. 1 meter, so I'm going to put a 1 next to meter in my conversion factor, and then 1.1 next to yards, so I'm going to put a 1.1 next to the yards in my conversion factor. Last but not least, we just need to do a little bit of calculator work. We're going to multiply everything in the numerator and then divide by everything in the denominator. So 150 times 1 is still going to be 150. So 150, and then we need to divide by everything in the denominator. So divided by 1, still be 150, and then divided by 1.1. 0.1. 150 divided by 1.1 gives us 136.363, and of course we need to figure out our units here. Yards is both in the numerator and the denominator, so those will cancel out. Our unit that is left is our meters, so that will be the unit of our answer. Our last step, now that we have our answer, is simply to round to the correct number of significant figures. Looking back in the problem, 150 yards was our given value, and that has two significant figures. The 1 and the 5 are significant, but the trailing 0 is not significant because there's no decimal points. There's two significant figures here. So that means that we need to round our answer to two significant figures. We get to keep the 1 and the 3, and then we'll look at the 6 to determine if we're going to round the 3 up or whether it's going to stay a 3. 6 is bigger than 5, so that means that our 3 will round up to a 4, so we have 1, 4. And then we have to fill in the place before the decimal point with a 0 to hold that place value. So we'll fill in a 0, and then the digits after the decimal point we don't need to worry about. 140 now has two significant figures. And of course our unit is meters, and we'll box in that answer here. Number 5 says convert 5.25 cups to liters, given that 4.2 cups equals 1 liter. So let's find our given value. Our given value is the 5.25, and the given unit is cups. So we're going to write that all the way to the left. 5.25 cups. And then we'll put that over 1 to remind ourselves that it's up in the numerator. Whenever we do dimensional analysis, we multiply by at least one conversion factor to get some new answer. Now first we want to set up our units. The unit we want to cancel goes in the denominator of our conversion factor, so that would be cups. We're trying to get rid of that unit, so we'll put that in the denominator. And then the unit that we desire, the unit that we want to get to, goes up in the numerator. So we're trying to go 2 liters. So liters is what's going to go in the numerator. And I'm going to abbreviate liters just with a capital L, or sometimes you will also see liters abbreviated with just a lowercase l. You can see both, which can be confusing sometimes. Now that we've got those units set up properly, now let's look at our given equality. 4.2 cups equals 1 liter. And we'll pair those numbers up with where they go in our conversion factor. So 4.2 cups, so I'm going to put a 4.2 next to cups, which happens to be in my denominator. 4.2 cups. And then 1 liter equals 1 liter, so I'll put 1 up in the numerator of my conversion factor. Now, all we have to do to finish up this problem is do our calculator work. So 5.25 times 1 divided by 1 divided by 4.2. 5.25 times 1, which we really didn't need to do because it's still going to be 5.25, divided by 4.2. We'll hit enter. And when we did that math, it gives us 1.25. 1.25. Now let's look at our units. Cups is both in the numerator and in the denominator, so that will cancel out. And we're just left with liters as our final unit. So liters. And last but not least, we need to check our significant figures. So our given value, 5.25, had 3 significant figures. So our final answer also needs to have 3 significant figures. And look at that, 1.25 already has 3 significant figures, so all we need to do here is box our final answer. There's no need to round. We already have correct sig figs.